Hello. How is everybody doing? It's Renee Bird, and I am here for my first Who Am I talk for January 2021. This year has been already quite trying, and I think we will soon get out of it. I just got to have faith that that will happen. So I am here today, this evening, with a very special guest. Her name is Kathi Scott. She is the Executive Director for the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. Hello, Denise. And we are very good friends. So it's the first time in a while that I get a chance to see her. And we're going to talk everything about herself, her journey, and the charity. And, you know, it stands for the man himself, the icon, Mr. Nelson Mandela. So I will be getting her to join me right now. And how's everyone? I know we're in lockdown in the UK for all my international followers. There is light. We are having vaccines, things like that happening. So very, very soon we should find a level of, I wouldn't say normality, but hopefully peace. We'll be able to get together as a family and do all the things that we all love to do. So it's so lovely to see you. Congratulations, Denise, on your appointment. I hope you're well and your family, and thank you for everyone that's joined. So let's get lovely Kathi on. Give me 1 second, guys. Be nice, Instagram. Be nice. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And there she is.
Hi.
Kathi, hi, pie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. It's quite dark over there.
Yeah.
I can't. Is it the lighting? Oh, okay. That's not so bad.
Okay.
Can't see your beautiful face.
That's probably a good thing, given it's the first time I've put makeup on and I don't know how long. So.
Oh, you look wonderful. So how have you been? What's been going on? I haven't seen you. We said it the other day. We haven't actually seen each other for a whole year.
I know, it's almost a year since we actually were out together. So it's very sad. And I'm missing so many friends, so many family. And I just hope we get out of this thing soon, because it's pulling people apart, which is just hideous, and it's putting so much strain on people as well. But no, I'm absolutely fine. Obviously, I'm like most people, probably not coping with lockdown 3 as well as I did with lockdown 1.
I know.
And I read something really interesting a few days ago from someone that said, to summarize their lockdown, it's a bit like they miss everybody, but they don't want anyone to talk to them. They're tired, but they're fidgety, and also they feel that there's not enough for them to do during the day, but actually there are not enough hours in the day. So it's really interesting. It summarizes how certainly I feel anyway. But yeah, let's hope.
Yeah. Let's hope. I don't watch too much of the news because it can be a bit overwhelming at times.
I agree.
I know that our rate or something's gone down, which is something positive apparently. But the mortality rate has gone up. So I don't know. It's so hard to know where to navigate, really. You know, I think we do need to spend some time in lockdown so we can bring it all down, and then hopefully bit by bit, as the most vulnerable get vaccinated, we might see some changes, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy to have you on here. Ladies and gentlemen, Kathi Scott is the director for the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund UK. She's a dear friend, a bestie. We've known each other over 10 years, which is crazy. I was thinking about how long. I was going through and thinking, wow, literally, it was one of your, I think, team members at the time reached out, didn't they, to me?
That's right.
And I had a boardroom, and I saw this fiery, really beautiful blonde, tiny little, you're so small. And I was like, this is different. And you were sharing the charity. And I was like, I remember as a child watching Nelson Mandela, watching what he went through. And then, you know, fast track as a young lady to be involved in such iconic charity. And then to have a friend at the end of it as well. Because, you know, people in our industry have loads of people we meet, don't we, along the way. But to meet people who become your friends, and we've cried together, we've laughed together, that's really powerful. And what you stand for and what you're doing for this charity is remarkable.
Yeah, and actually, you know, it's really interesting because that's one of the most wonderful things about working for charity is that the wide range of people that you meet, and you meet the best of people and you meet the worst of people. But the one thing that, one of the really wonderful perks of this job is the fact that you meet so many lifelong friends, and people that will, you know, that really turn into friends and are as passionate about the causes that you are. But then you realize how much you have in common with people. And I hate to burst your bubble, Renee, but I think it's more like 15 years. You're a bit older than you think.
Oh, is it how long?
Yeah.
God, no, but the thing is, time seems to stand still sometimes. But is it how long? My goodness.
Yeah, it is.
Oh yeah,
it is.
So it just shows our friendship. It shows how hard. My God, 15 years you've been working, and that's beyond that. You know, let's start from the beginning. You helped create this charity. And, you know, not a lot of people understand the background too. They see charities all the time, don't they? And a lot of people, unfortunately, use his name in many other ways, but this charity has a lot to do with him. So yeah, share your story. How did it start? Even before we go to the charity, what was you in before you even got involved in the charity industry?
Well, obviously, as you may be able to detect from my accent, I was born in Northern Ireland, and I was born at a time when the Troubles were pretty much at their peak. And for anyone that doesn't know what the Troubles are, that's obviously the inner conflict between the Catholic and Protestant communities, or I should say, you know, the political parties. And you know, those were tough times. I was very lucky and, you know, very blessed in that I was born into a mixed family, which meant I had a Catholic mother and a Protestant father. And so we had a very balanced upbringing. So we went to Catholic primary school, then I went to Catholic secondary and left and joined my brother and sister at a Protestant grammar. So we got to see and understand everyone's perspective. And, you know, my parents were amazing, and, you know, my whole family were really good people. And so I felt very blessed and fortunate that actually I did get that exposure and could understand that this nonsense of them and us is it's just ridiculous. It's not acceptable. It's ridiculous. And, you know, there's so many things that you go through in life that you're challenged by, and really to fight over religion is just, or politics is just not, it's just not worth it. Life's too short. So I knew from a very young age that my that notion of them and us was completely wrong, and I didn't want to be part of that. And I respected everybody's culture, everybody's religion, and I wanted to do something about that. And my father taught me about Nelson Mandela when I was 10 years old, and I was fascinated by that whole story and would follow it as best I could with the limited resources that you had in those days. And also the fact that you know, the news didn't really give you 24 coverage or from different perspectives, so you relied on what you knew. And really, after you know, Northern Ireland was so divided that I knew that I didn't want to stay there during that period, and I needed to spread my wings and get away. And so I did. I left the country when I was young, and by myself, and much to the absolute horror and shock of my family, and and moved overseas, and I lived in different places, and then I found myself eventually in the back in England, and I was working in sports and event management. Oh, and I've just seen that my best friend from childhood has just joined. Hi, Joe.
Hello, Joe.
From the Isle of Man.
Thank you for joining.
And you know, I spent a few years on the Isle of Man, and got totally misled by Joe for many years, but she's remained the most wonderful friend. And and so we you know, I moved around eventually. When I came down to London to live, I went back to work for a law firm that I'd originally been involved with in the Isle of Man, and I wasn't really enjoying the work. And my boss said to me one day, "Kath, you don't like doing this, you don't like doing this, you don't like doing this. Is there anything about this job that you do like?" And I said, "No, there's really not." No. And he said, "Well, I've got a project for you, but there's someone that I want you to meet." And what had happened was that this this wonderful man called Michael had was a partner in a firm, and he'd been asked by President Mandela to set up the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund in the UK. And so I was asked to go quietly and meet Mr. Mandela, which I did. And when he was on a private visit here, and he said to me, "You're very young. You look like you should be at school. Can you do this job?" And I was so full of bravado, and I said, "Yes, I can do the job." And that was it. That's how I got my job. And I started very, you know, totally naive. But the second week into the job, I got a fax, because that's what we had in those days, from South Africa to say, "Mr. Mandela will be coming on a visit to the UK, and we need you to organise a breakfast with the South African High Commissioner for 80 people." And they give me this wish list of of guests that ranged from Richard Branson to you know, the most Lennox Lewis, the most incredible guest list. And a couple of members of the royal family. And I looked at this and I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. So I left the office and I went to a bookshop and I bought Debrett's Guide to Etiquette and Debrett's Guide to Speaking in Public. And that's how I managed to craft the letters. And out of those 80 wish lists, we got 80 people, the people on the wish list. They came immediately. And that's how it really started. And the first year, really, that I wasn't heavily involved in the fundraising, we raised a decent amount of money. I think it was about £60,000. My first year into the job, we raised £500,000. So I think they thought, and that, a lot of that was luck. I'm not taking much credit for that, but I think they felt that okay, maybe she's all right at fundraising. So I was seconded full time to the charity, and that was back in 1996. So I've been there ever since, and I wish I could raise £500,000 a year at the moment, but it's not happening.
Don't worry. Yeah, I know. I think a lot of charities at this time are being severely affected, aren't they? People don't realise, you know, most charities, and you correct me if I'm wrong, rely on a lot of funding or individual donations from people. So if people are stuck, it's hard for then charities to function, isn't it?
It's extremely difficult.
Yeah, after you, baby. After
you.
No,
go.
So pull back a bit. Obviously, they chose you, and Nelson Mandela, he said, "You're the person for the job." And what's the conception of this charity? You know, a lot of people don't know this charity actually was financially, am I right, donated by him. So what's the story about that?
So really, it's a lovely story. I mean, he had just become president. It was winter and he was leaving a meeting one evening. And as he went to go to his car, a group of street children ran up to the vehicle. And the first thing one of them said to him was, "Mr. President, why do you love us?" And he was really quite taken aback by that. And he said, "Well, how do you know that I do love you?" And they said, "Well, when you go overseas, you give us lots of money." And the money they were referring to was from his Nobel Peace Prize, which he donated to lots of children's charities in South Africa. And so he was quite surprised that even though they were on their own, they knew about this. And also he spent a bit of time with them talking and saying, "Okay, well, where are your parents? How have you got into this situation?" So he said that he could have given them some money and eased his conscience and gone home, but he knew that wasn't going to solve the long-term problems in the country. And so he went home, tossed and turned that night, and the very next morning he phoned a number of people in the South African community and gathered them into his living room, and he started the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. He pledged 1/3 of his annual presidential salary to start and run the fund, and he challenged many other corporates, not just in South Africa but internationally as well, to also do that, and they did, and they rose to that challenge, and that's how we started.
Right. Wow. And I've attended the offices that were in central London, but you've moved a couple of times, haven't you? You used to be quite in the Mayfair near Ritz. You told me a story, I think, once he was coming and you had to organise some stuff. I mean, so many good things that you've happened.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very fortunate because we had an amazing company called Maitland, who actually sponsored us, sponsored our offices, and that was thanks to Michael Solomon. And so we were very lucky that we were worked out of these really nice offices. And yes, we have moved backwards and forwards. And interestingly, we had decided last year when we had to leave our current offices that we didn't really want to open new premises for a while. And we made that decision in February, me and Barbara and the team, and then decided, okay, well, let's set up in my house for a while until we find the right spot for us and decide what, you know, where we want to be and what the next step is for the charity in terms of what it needs. And we actually set everything up in my house. We got, I think within the space of about a week and a half, we had virtual offices, the whole computer system sorted, we had a phone system sorted, we had everything into a storage unit near where Barbara and I live. And then the very next day we went off to South Africa on a work trip. And it was during that time that both governments in South Africa and the UK said, right, there's going to be lockdowns. And so that's how we, I think we were very lucky because we had, for some reason, this idea that we should be all set up perfectly at home at that time. And so we were able to very easily just come back and work. Obviously with lockdown, I had to work from the house on my own, and Barbara luckily is just down the road, so we could communicate and work every day, which was really good.
So yeah, you obviously had a premonition about what was happening and kind of really got yourself aligned. I've got quite a few people. Do you know any of these names?
I'm just seeing Maz. Hi Maz, wonderful Mazzy, great friend of the charity, and
wonderful.
Check out her amazing cooking, Maz Jenkins 6. Was really good. And I've just seen that Body by Fleur has joined. So Fleur, it's been years I worked or I met Fleur, who was the most incredible ballerina in Monaco at an event we did many years ago. And we see each other on Instagram, and unfortunately we've never had the opportunity to see each other in real life since, because she lives overseas as well. But hi Fleur.
That's nice. That's lovely. So, hello to everyone that joined. Thank you so much for joining. If whoever hasn't heard, this is the most amazing good friend, Kathi Scott, who is the director for the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. And so wow, we talk about the hospital because obviously I've been with the charity a long time, and I remember when the idea came about fundraising for the hospital. So talk me through that. That was a really big venture for the charity.
Yeah, great. And just before I say that, sending hugs back to Fleur, but also hi to Eppelang, our Crazy Legs runner in South Africa.
Oh yes,
incredible, who I'll talk about in a minute. And he's contacting us from South Africa.
Hello, lovely. Yes, I remember he did the run, didn't he, for the charity? That's right. Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
So the hospital was just, it's a project that we're really, you know, we still sometimes can't believe it, and we're very proud of it. And really, it unfortunately came from a very sad story where our CEO, wonderful CEO called Bongi, lost her young son through an accident, and he sadly died. And during the time that he was being treated in an adult hospital, and at that time Bongi saw the glaring problems with regard to childcare in hospitals in South Africa. And so when he passed away, Mr. Mandela and Mama Michelle said to Bongi, is there anything we can do? And she said, look, you can't bring my son back, but you really need to look at the healthcare facilities for children in South Africa. And he said, okay, go and do it. So she formed a team, and we did a feasibility study over a number of years, and we discovered that, you know, it really was, hi Kyan, we discovered that really there was a terrible lack of children's facilities, hospital facilities in the African continent as a whole. And so that feasibility study led us to actually looking at building a hospital, and it took a number of years, but we had to raise around $100 million, and which we did, and we opened the hospital in 2017, and we are currently not at full capacity in terms of our theatres of excellence, the number of them, but we're phasing in bit by bit. And at the moment, it's we're doing incredible work, and obviously working very hard because COVID is a challenge as well. So it was one of the biggest civil society projects ever undertaken in Southern Africa, and I think we're really, really proud that we managed to achieve that. And you know, it'll be wonderful to see. We have a saying that you never know who the next Mandela will be, and you know, so many children are losing their lives through very simple procedures that they just didn't have access to. And you know, just one of those children could have the cure for cancer. You know, could be an amazing scientist and amazing politician, and you know, we'll never know because they just haven't had the medical treatment and they've sadly passed before they should. So our job is to really ensure that the population of the country are happy and healthy, and you know, we protect the future leaders of the country.
Yeah, I love that. You know, as you said, it's access to care, access to education. People, you know, I hear people in the UK or Western countries, and I'm not saying that there's not an example of deprivation even in this country, so I don't want to make a judgment, but we don't realize, I haven't been to South Africa, when it comes to deprivation, it's at the highest order. You see people that are walking without no shoes, you know, and when you look at that, but what's even amazing about it is even though they've got that, you find that some of them have come out and they're doctors and they've become teachers. So even being in that environment, they strive even higher, I think, sometimes than we do in Western countries, because they actually truly appreciate everything they've been given, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing. I mean, obviously, I've worked for this charity for 25 years,
Wow.
and almost. And I think that the one thing that always struck me from years ago was just how happy children are. You know, on the whole of the African continent, but obviously I'm going to talk mainly about South Africa because that's where we're really based. But it's just the thirst for learning, the appreciation of learning and education, and the realization of the importance of it. And I think it fascinates me because a lot of my friends at the moment and my family are really struggling with homeschooling. I mean, there's a million memes that float around about homeschooling, and everyone, you know, is turning into an alcoholic because they just don't know what a pronoun is, or they can't play the violin and teach their kids. And, you know, that I totally get. I mean, I would be a terrible teacher. But what I find really interesting is, you know, and they're saying my child just won't learn, my child will just not pay attention. And I suppose there are two sides to that. There's the one side that says, look, you know, school is a place for learning and home is a place for relaxing. And it's very difficult mentally for a child to sit at home and not want to play with their toys or watch TV or play with their iPads. It's not conducive to that learning environment, no matter what anyone says. But at the same time, there's the added point that I think because in, you know, this hemisphere, we're so used to having an education and, you know, everything at our fingertips, that you don't appreciate it. It becomes a chore. Oh, I've got to go to school and I don't want to go to school.
True.
As opposed to actually really understanding and appreciating what you have. And so for me, also, I think a lot of people in this hemisphere, they don't have to be creative. You know, I think it's you know, everyone just can have things here. They don't have to think, they don't have to be creative. Whereas in, you know, countries like South Africa, in rural areas or in, you know, previously disadvantaged areas, it's very difficult for children. They have to be creative, they have to think, they have to use their brains, they have to, you know, make activities and toys for themselves, and, you know, find activities and things to do. So, you know, I think it's magical. And, you know, sometimes I've often said, when Barbara and I have done so many school visits, and we say to ourselves, you know, we really wish we could bottle up some of what we see in South Africa and put it in schools here.
Bring it here. I think it's important that you talk about that. I think I haven't got children, and I do have friends and family that have children. And I've always said, you've almost got to encourage humanitarianism in children, because our children in the Western world, they've got, electronics, they've got everything effectively, and some haven't, because I understand there's been, in cases, even the homeschooling, have to be aware that some children haven't got computers or even access to Wi-Fi. So that is happening, unfortunately, in the Western world. But for the ones that do have the opportunities, I think it's important to train them young to understand that there's some kids that haven't got all these things. So when they do get fed up with toys, because I know they've got so much stuff, is making them understand that they can give it to charities, they can give it to kids that are less privileged, and training them in that mindset from very young. Because it's not their fault. If you've had all the things and access to pick up the phone, which I didn't have a phone when I was little, these kids have got phones. I always wonder what they're talking about, but they've got phones. And making them realise that what we have as children is much more greater than most kids have. And even the ones that haven't got, as you said, they're creative in the way they play and they become scholars. Not to deviate, I used to give to another charity, I'm not going to name it because we're talking about the charity that I'm connected to, and it would basically nominate and look after and sponsor children. And it was the most beautiful thing I think I sent once a little mirror, and it was made of Swarovski, a little crystal mirror, and it apparently created pandemania in the shanty town, because they had this thing which looked like diamonds to them, and it's been shared around. And just think something so simple as that, they really, it made it treasured. They were treasuring it. And as I say, we don't realize the impact and what we have and what some kids haven't got, So what you said is really real, really true.
It's true. And also, I think what's been really interesting about this whole year of lockdown are just how many people that realize you don't need so much stuff. I had to today, when I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to wear tonight? Because I've been living in a tracksuit for 12 months. And I think, sometimes I open the wardrobes and, you and I both do huge amount of networking, and we go to, 5 nights a week we were at events and doing things.
That's right.
And so you have a very extensive wardrobe and suddenly you open the doors of these wardrobes and you think, I don't actually need any of this stuff, and I don't know when I'm going to wear pink sequins again. And so what I've found really interesting, again, as part of our neighborhood apps that go around, are just how many people that are not obviously just selling stuff because they're having to sell stuff to have money, because so many people haven't got jobs at the moment, but how many people are actually just giving things away. And I saw something even tonight on Facebook where someone actually was giving away 400 DVDs. They said, I'm giving these to a good cause.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and you just realise that maybe people are starting to realise we don't need so much. And I think we had reached a point that we just have too much stuff, and there's just no need for it.
No, totally. Mandy Platt, a good friend of mine. Hi, Mandy. She said they should teach mindfulness and life lessons in schools, because I think a lot of children, it's not their fault, as I said, they're not aware of the privilege that they have, or different levels of the privilege that they have. Like when you spoke about the fact that a lot of people are literally looking at what they have, between us, we've got bags, shoes, gowns, and we can do it in the house if we want to. Like this, I'm dressed up today. Other than that, I'm literally in my fitness gear or just hanging around. And it's made you really realize how back to basics and the simplicities and what counts, the gratitude, the fact that it's about our loved ones, our health is more important than anything at the moment. Any little cough you get, I don't know about you, I'm like, okay, is it a temperature? Is it a cough? I got a sore throat that goes, I'm Googling, trying to make sure it's not the symptoms, and it's ridiculous. You send yourself crazy because it's just a cold, and then when we're at home, because we're at home so much, our immune system is going to be a little bit more compromised. So it's just, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough. And Mandy raises a really interesting point. But what I will say is that there are certainly children nowadays, and schools are becoming really brilliant at sort of the global citizen curriculum and the understanding of other countries and their needs. And when I was a child, I'm not even going to really go into that, because you were encouraged to give and give very generously, but the terminology and the meaning behind it just you know, sort of makes me shiver now. Whereas today,
Mm.
kids are actively, particularly with Black History Season in schools, the Global Citizen curriculum, they're becoming much more aware of problems and issues in other countries and what they can do to help. And certainly we see it, especially in secondary schools, just how many young people, because they've got access to iPads and computers, they can research this and they can make their own minds up, and they can say, well, actually, this is not quite right, and you know, I want to do something about that. So certainly, I think, you know, people are becoming a lot more awake to the fact that you know, you have to be kinder.
No, you're completely right. Mandy said bullying stems from lack of gratitude and not learning really what matters. Yeah, a lot of it is a lack of awareness. A lot of people, when you look at last year, what was happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of the ones that you saw running around and screaming and being bigots, a lot of them didn't have a clue, actually. If they really sat and read a book, they'll learn so much more. So it's the lack of understanding. And as you say, you know, there's a bit of footage that remember we spoke about of a little black boy and a little white boy running and hugging, and they're babies, and they have not got no inbuilt-in prejudice. They just love each other because that's what they do, and it's only life, if you know, influences that then infringes on those mindsets, and that's what it is. Because when they're young, they just can't wait to be together.
Yeah, well, no one's born hating.
Thank you. Yeah, no, definitely. And just thinking now, I remember as a youngster watching a lot of events that that used to be held on behalf of Nelson Mandela. And I know you put on a very pivotal, we spoke about it, and it's just like, if I knew you then, you would have been there. You put on one of the most prestige events, I would say, in history for Nelson Mandela, for his 90th.
Which one?
Rightly, was his 90th. The one, the big concert that you put on, a massive concert with...
Well, we've done a few. Obviously.
So many. Okay, let's talk about the events that you put on. That has been fundraisers and what that entailed and all the things that were involved in it. My goodness.
Well, I think you know, we did one really great event in Trafalgar Square many years ago, which was a Freedom Day concert. First time a concert had been held in Trafalgar Square. The only sad part about it was that it poured with rain the entire day. But you know, that was a fantastic event in the UK, and really you know, full of warmth despite the rain, and you know, that was the first one. I think probably his birthday concert in Hyde Park was probably... That's
the one.
Yeah, it was probably the best.
As a child, I was watching it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was fantastic, and you know, just to see the outpouring of love from people, and just to be part of that was fantastic. Look, you know, events like that are extremely challenging and very hard work. And I remember that one particularly. There's so many stories from that one, but I remember in particular that I had not drunk tea or coffee for 18 years. I just didn't drink tea or coffee. And I was awake for 3 days consecutively. I didn't go to bed because we were stationed. He always stayed at the Dorchester, and then our operations centre was at the Intercontinental in Park Lane. And there were different rooms for different people, but me and my team were out in the foyer of the Intercontinental, and we were dealing basically with everybody from people coming to get tickets, to look for tickets, to anything that needed sorting out. We were fixing it. And you know, it's brilliant, but it's so intense that for 3 full days I did not go to bed, and I started drinking coffee again. So I never stopped after that.
That was it.
That was it. But you know, there's so many funny stories you can tell from that, and there's actually a BBC documentary that was done that shadowed Mr. Mandela and our team for about 5 years, and I must try and find out what the name of that was, because I can't remember now, but that documentary went on BBC Two, I think, and focused on that concert as well, and it is quite funny. Yeah, there's lots goes on behind the scenes that are...
Well, it's the thing, people don't understand the work that goes in. I've obviously been very blessed to perform on behalf of the charity for various events and stuff, and all the logistics that's going on, and all the different egos you're trying to manage. Thankfully, your friend hasn't got one, because she does what she needs to do. But loads of artists, nameless, we will say no names, that want this in the room and want that drink and want that area, and all the different things that you've got to do to make it flawless. Even though in the background, I call it the swan effect, you know, gliding along, but in the background you're trying to move. And but you know, after you,
it's you know, those kind of events are very challenging, because if you even take like a gala dinner, where you've got, first of all, the pressure of fundraising or having sponsorship in order to cover the costs of that before you even start to make money for the charity. You've got any kind of entertainment, you're looking at 60-70 pages of a risk assessment,
yes,
you know, which you have to go through. You have insurances to go through. You have to coordinate so many things. And then a lot of venues, and you know, I'm thinking about the last gala dinner we had. It was a public venue that only would close at 5:30, and our guests are arriving at 7. And in that 1.5 hour, we have to get everyone in, from rigging teams in to do lighting and sound technicians, to people rolling in tables, to lay tables, to get the caterers in, to decorate the tables, to get everyone's goodie bags put out, to have sound checks, rehearsals. I mean, there's just your volunteer teams. So much work goes into that, and by the time the event is, you know, literally you can be sitting with maybe 3 minutes of a window. I remember the last one we did, my team literally ran up and lined up as the guests started to walk down the stairs, and you know, you're standing there, and usually you look like death by 1,000, you know, hammers, because you haven't had time to do anything, makeup, hair, nothing. You're just, you're a sweaty mess. But what will happen is you've first of all had all that incredible prep work to do, which is maybe 6-8 weeks. Constantly, long hours, long days, 20 hours a day sometimes. Then you have the massive pressure to get it ready on the evening, and then everyone comes in, and you'll seat 600 people, and suddenly you'll get a message in your earpiece to say, can you go to table 51, because there's a woman there saying that she's too cold. And you go up, and you then have to go and see how you can regulate temperatures, and then you'll say, well, actually the temperature's at this, and we've checked it, and we've moved things around. And then someone will say that speaker's too loud. Someone else will say she got a bigger bit of lamb than me. You know, someone doesn't like the vodka, someone doesn't like this, and you may be sitting with 1,000 different things you're trying to sort out on that one evening. So they're very challenging, and you have to try and keep your sense of humour.
No, well, the great thing is we've had many moments of laughter, and you are a good laugh, I must say. We've had many moments after. We won't say any of them, but there's one in particular we remember walking down the road, and we're literally holding ourselves. We couldn't even get up. So you are a giggle. You're a giggle and a half. But no, you have to.
I think actually that's a story that we can tell. You know, I think I was doing the laughing, and you were more of a compassionate one, and
I was guiding.
Because Eppeling's online at the moment. I think we'll talk about that. So it was one night that you and I had done an event, and it was very stressful, and we decided afterwards, you and I we would literally go for a little walk and have something to eat, because neither of us had eaten anything. And so we went to this restaurant somewhere in Trafalgar Square, actually.
Trafalgar Square again, we're always down there.
And we had a bite to eat, and when we came out, suddenly this blind man with a stick came hurtling past us and walked straight into a wall. And
that's right.
Then you tried to help him, and then he turned by himself, and he walked into a crowd of people at a restaurant, and suddenly we realized he was completely drunk.
Yes.
And the minute that I realized that he was extremely drunk, then I had this nervous laughter, and I couldn't do anything. You went running down the street in your heels to try and rescue this very drunk guy.
Rescue. Because the thing is, and what it was, you have to have seen it to experience it, because hear me, we're not laughing at the fact that he's blind. No, that's not what it is.
No.
But we didn't expect him to be that wasted, blind, because there's nothing, your coordination, everything's gone out. So I was doing my best to hold him together, and it was a tough one. And the lady helped, didn't she? The lady helped him and walked him, and then got him.
Yeah, we didn't have 2 meter social distancing and that in those days. So
no, we didn't. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had many moments of, and I think, you know what, that's what it is when you're putting on an event or when you're a part of an event. There's so many different airs, and people, you know, too snooty nose. We've seen everything when it comes to people with loads of money and do you know who I am and who I'm not and all the rest of it. But the reality is, this year, if anything, has shown us you can have a jet. You can be living in the biggest house in the world. We're still under lockdown.
Well, you know, it's interesting because where I live, across the road from me, there's a row of very stunningly beautiful, massive houses. And during the first lockdown, every single week on a Thursday, there was a man that would walk down that road with a loudspeaker yelling, "Your Bentleys are not much use to you now." And he did it every single week. It was quite funny. But you know, also what's interesting is that with events and fundraising events like that, you know, you've got a mixture of people that are just fantastic and are so willing to help you, and then you've got people that are just a little bit more tricky. But what we always did as a team was that we had different staff members that would be in charge of certain aspects of that event. And so I know there have been several occasions, and this will lead me on to maybe talking about Epilang, where my team have taken a decision amongst themselves: we are not telling Kathi that, because she's going to literally explode. And so they try and deal with certain situations. And just for the viewers, Crazy Legs, or Epilang, who's also become a very dear friend of ours, was born with a brain deformity in South Africa in a township, which technically meant he shouldn't be able to walk from the bedroom to the bathroom. And he has a problem with balance and so forth. But despite his situation and circumstances, he managed to get himself to start off at university, brilliant at PR, and then couldn't finish that. But he took up, he was getting very depressed, and he put a lot of weight on, he said, and he decided that he wanted to go and lose some of the weight. So he would go in the middle of the night, and he taught himself to run on crutches. And he came to us at one point and said, so I'm being accepted to run the Two Oceans Marathon in South Africa, and I'd like to raise money for you. And he did it. And he was asked after that Two Oceans Marathon, what is your next step? What's your next move? What's your dream? And he said, I want to run in the UK. And so my colleague in South Africa phoned me and said, what do you think? And I remember saying, well, our CEO is going to say absolutely not. So we're going to have to be really sneaky and do this without her knowing, and then tell her. And so my colleague Barbara and myself and Vuyokazi, who was my colleague in South Africa, we started working with IPS, and we managed to get him a place in the Virgin 10K in London. And to get sponsorship, thanks to South African Airways, who were brilliant, to fund him and Vuyo's flights over, and a lot of other wonderfully kind people that helped. And on the one, there were a couple of challenges, one of which that Epps had to get a passport, and his passport had still not come through the morning of him flying to London, except that Barbara and Vuyo and him didn't tell me. So I'm merrily going about my business, and meanwhile Epilang has somehow got himself to the government buildings in Pretoria and somehow sneaked in. He's like a ninja, sneaked in through security and gone mental. And then, long story short, it turned out that the passport office there had given his passport to some elderly gentleman who was white with an Afrikaans name, and Epilang Gunu's passport was in this guy's hands. And luckily this man had come back to the building And as he was at the building, Eppling was there, and they crossed over, and Eppling got his passport. So they rushed to the airport, and they came to London. And it was during Mr. Mandela's centenary celebrations year. So Eppling managed to run the 10K with an incredible bunch of people. So there were about 50 supporters of ours that ran that 10K with him. And it was a blisteringly hot day, and he did brilliantly. And then he was able to participate in the celebrations at the South Bank, where Prince Harry and Meghan attended, and then Westminster Abbey when Mr. Mandela's stone was laid. So it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. But Eppling has run several marathons since then, and you know, he's an incredible example of someone that has risen through really tough times and adversity with a very determined mindset that says, you know, I know my abilities, I'm a brilliant marathon runner on crutches, and I really want to change disability, the way people think and treat disabled people. And particularly he's working extremely hard at the moment on making sure that the South African government and other bodies, influential bodies in South Africa, actually start taking the Paralympics seriously and start making life much easier and giving many more opportunities to people with disabilities. And you know, he's really a remarkable person, and I would ask anyone who's watching this to follow him. And it's his Insta is CKRAZY legs with a Z, and he's brilliant.
That's amazing. What an incredible story. The audience said it's an incredible story. And he just literally aligns to what Nelson Mandela stands for, isn't it? Because, you know, knowing his story, how he sat in the island and literally was, how many years was in here? How many years was in
27 years in jail, yeah.
And have you been to, I've obviously been to South Africa, and I can't wait once this award is lifted. Did you ever go to that area, or did you ever do a tour or anything around?
Yes, I was extremely lucky that my first trip to Robben Island, where he spent a large portion of his prison time, I was given the tour by an incredible guy called Kathi Scott, who was in prison with him, and who sadly passed also now. But he was a remarkable man, and he took me because my name was Kathi and his name was Kathi, and so we spelt it very similar. So he decided he was the one that was going to take me around. So my very first trip to Robben Island was with him, and then I went back many times after that with donors when we did events for lots of reasons. So and it was very difficult for me because I absolutely have a huge fear of helicopters. Absolutely cannot bear being on a helicopter. And often that's how you went. Otherwise, you went on this boat, and that's even worse for me. So,
Wow.
I nearly needed tranquilized before I went over there. So, yes, I've been many times, and it's definitely worth a visit. It's really important that you experience that.
It must be humbling. I think that's what I pick up when I've seen it on the TV, or I've looked at articles. It looks very humbling and says a lot about the great man. And obviously, you've met him. What was your first impression of Nelson Mandela? He feels like a granddad to me. Like he would give me loads of cuddles or give me some things to think about. You know, that generation speak in quotes, don't they? Or they speak in parables. What was he like as a man?
Well, according to my mom, the first time, you know, obviously I was quite young when I started the job, but whenever I came away that day and got the job, apparently I rang my mom and I said, I can die happy because I've met him.
Wow.
And I think it's really interesting. There are certain people in the world and they have an aura, and there's just no question that he had an aura. He had an aura. You know, when you walked into a room, I mean, I know this sounds really, really bad, but I often compare it to like the first time I saw a giraffe. Because you know, when you go on safari for the first time and you see a giraffe in real life, it's quite an experience because it's surreal. You know, you've read and
you mean
seen
they are
giraffes,
amazing,
you know, in books and on TV for years, and suddenly, oh my God, this thing is really real. It's there. It exists.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I do know what you mean.
That was exactly what it was like meeting Mr. Mandela. It was like, oh my God, he's real. I can touch him, you know,
Wow.
he's there.
Yeah.
And so I think what was fascinating was when you did events, when he came, when he met people, was just how overwhelmed people were when they were in his presence. You know, I remember once in South Africa doing an event at one of the convention centres, and it was the evening and he was leaving, and as we were coming out, this cleaning lady was brushing the floor, mopping the floor, and she did a double take, and she literally got on her knees and she was screaming, and I remember he really happily said to her, "Why are you screaming?" and you know, so there was a lot of he had a massive impact. Again, you would do events, and I remember when he would go to leave a room, because he, you know, he would come for a period of time and then he would leave, and then the proceedings would carry on. But he would start to leave, and I saw grown men that would literally jump over chairs and tables to get close to him. And I used to stand back with my colleagues and we'd be like, what is wrong with people?
What's wrong with these people? Yeah,
so,
he's got that presence, yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
and so I remember one of the last people that he saw before she died was Princess Diana. She came to South Africa and they made a pledge that they would do an event together for HIV and AIDS. And when she passed later that year, he said to us, you know, I want to honour that. We have to do something. And so I remember we did an event in the UK with the Diana Princess of Wales Memorial Fund. And we did it at Spencer House. And obviously it's very beautiful and very regal. And again, it was a very small event in that there were maybe 120 people, very selective people that, you know, paid to come to this dinner. And very important people and great entertainment. And I remember at the time my colleague Maylene in South Africa and she had come over to help, and then one of the ladies at the Memorial Fund, we were a bit mischievous, and we thought we need to do something here that no one really knows about except us, because the most important thing for us was that we knew Mr. Mandela would leave that event around 8:30 because he would get tired and he would have to go. And so it was really important for us that we hadn't done any of the fundraising activities, and it was really important for the flow of the event and to make sure that we maximised the fundraising for both organisations, that we had to make sure that the audience were not doing this. They weren't rushing out or leaving immediately after he left. And so what happened was he started to leave, and we got him out of the main room, and the crowd is a bit euphoric and a bit restless, and people are starting to stand up, and we knew at this point that the main courses were coming. And so we had arranged, and it was way back in the day before it became popular, I think we were one of the first that did it, that we had these a couple of waiters and a chef and the floor manager were all fake. And so when he left, suddenly this floor manager gets up on a chair and starts screaming at the audience to sit down. Then a waiter joins in, and then suddenly the chef comes running out with like a wooden spoon or something. He started yelling at the floor manager. And everybody, and I remember Earl Spencer literally standing up and looking over at us horrified, like, make this stop. And,
what on earth is happening?
And we're just like, laughing, and the three of us with our clipboards, because we always did clipboards, on a pen, and we were like, ha ha ha. And then suddenly they burst into this operatic music. And then that, like,
that's right, they do that at events.
Yeah, it shocked him and the others even more. And then suddenly everyone realizes that this is a whole act, and it was brilliant. Amazing. So we have a little bit of mischief sometimes on that. Hi Sam, I see Sammy Dollar Sam on the banjos.
Hey Sam, oh gosh, I spoke to him the other day. How are you doing? Oh. Yeah, no, wow. You're right, actually at events now they tend to do that. But yeah, back then that must have been, I can only imagine all the public figures were looking and thinking, oh my God, it's gone really bad. He's left. Thank God it's happened when he left.
Oh no, that was the whole point. But it made everybody sit down. It was quite fun. It was quite funny, and there were plenty of secrets that we hadn't told that night as well. Especially, I remember a wonderful gentleman that managed Spencer House, and what happened was we had arranged for these wonderful African drummers in loincloths to welcome everybody as you walked in. And I remember the chandelier was actually shaking with the noise of these drums, and this guy going, "Oh no, the chandelier!" And it was
That's really funny.
So we always try to incorporate a little bit of mystery and the unexpected into those events. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. You told me, I remember one time, I don't know who it was, but I think they were all lined up. I think it was a Dorchester, because they keep doing it, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And some lady looked like she was going to pass out, and he was like, "Don't you dare." What was that? What was that occasion?
Oh my gosh, that happens.
There's so many, isn't there? There's been so many
those things happened regularly when you least wanted them as well. The one thing he did do, and I always remember this, the best memory, that was in an event we did in Monaco that Fleur would have been at, I think, was the day that he checked out of the Hotel de Paris and he was leaving. He was coming out with Prince Albert, and we always, as his staff, we lined up to wave him off as he would come out. And at that time we were down one side, the team, and then a lot of the staff at the hotel were on the other side. And as he was walking out, he suddenly lifted his stick and he went, "They work for me." They work for me. And you know, so you know, you do miss that. Miss that a lot. Mm-hmm.
No, he was incredible. I think some of the generation below, the youngsters, don't actually realise what this man represents, because obviously he's passed, but where his legacy. And I always think about what he would have thought about this pandemic. He would have had a word for it. He would have had a word for the Black Lives Matter. He would have had a word for peace, wouldn't he? All the mess that you've seen in the States, he would have had an opinion about it. And I think there's a lot we can learn from him as an icon. And his family as well, because I know when it comes to all the daughters, what they stood for. So the whole Mandela line and legacy, or dynasty, I call them. What we talk about when it comes to the future of the charity. Obviously, I know the pandemic, there's effects that charities are feeling, but what would you like for it? What would you see the future? His legacy, obviously, but.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, it's always a difficult one, because the thing that you really want, if you're really dedicated and passionate about a cause and working in charity, the thing that you want is that you don't actually have to exist. You don't want that need to be there. You want to eradicate that need. You don't want to see children that are hungry. You do not want to see children that are being abused, that are, you know, suffering, that are being child trafficked. You don't want to see young people being forced into criminal activity. You want to see equality. There's just you know, there's just no excuse in this world for inequality based on skin color. There just is no excuse for that. And I think that but the reality is, and made much worse by a pandemic, is that the need is greater because the poverty is becoming, you know, more widespread. You know, so many people, you know, that had the ability to donate to charities now themselves don't have the ability to give that spare money away. And you know, so charities, and including us, we suffer really, really difficult times because we know that that demand and that need is much, much greater. We've also got the added challenge of COVID, and at the same time, we have much less money to work with. And we had a really interesting Zoom call yesterday, a meeting with the head of the hospital and ourselves, and just to discuss what we really need at the moment. What are we running out of? What do we need? What do we need to look at in terms of funding? And again, it's very simple things where, you know, you work out a plan and you say, okay, I'm going to need 900,000 masks for this period of time. But then the one thing that you haven't factored in is that when people arrive at the hospital, no matter who they are, whether they're, you know, patients, guardians, visitors, whatever, we can't allow them into that clinical environment with their own mask. So we have to give them a mask there. And so then suddenly you think, oh gosh, there's another, you know, 100,000 masks that we hadn't thought about. We have to factor that in, and there's a massive cost implication to that. But what is really fantastic. And one of the things that I've been very proud of the Children's Fund, Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, is that we were always one step ahead in terms of what we thought might be an issue. So for example, way back when we first started, we identified HIV and AIDS orphans, and we did a research paper on that, which actually ended up being lobbied at government and then rolled out into many other NGOs. We then identified, when the World Cup was coming to South Africa, the incidence or the increase of child trafficking and the potential for that to occur. And we ran out and rolled out a massive programme, which we worked with about 13 other major NGOs in South Africa, Southern Africa, to try and eradicate that and minimise the amount of child abuse, child slavery, child trafficking that would go on. So we always try to think a little bit ahead and a little bit differently. And the one amazing thing about the Children's Hospital and our Vulnerable Children project at the Children's Fund are just how forward-thinking they are in terms of this pandemic, because this is not going to be the pandemic. There is going to be a bigger pandemic, and we have to really have the technology and the digital technology to make sure that we're able to access very remote areas, to make sure that we're able to deal with a lot of the problems that could come our way. So, you know, obviously at the moment we're talking about some very exciting work that we may be looking at with the hospital and with regard to training as well. And so I think the more that we can try and, you know, ride through the storm and get people to understand that we're not sitting doing nothing. We really, we have a moral responsibility to our donors, to our donees, and to ourselves, to make sure that we carry this on, the good work on, as long as possible, and try and minimise the horrible things that happen to children as best that we can. And the only thing you can do in this life is the best you can. I mean, I often, you know, you and I have talked about
it's
it.
incredible. You know, you're a friend, but I say this publicly, what you've done and what the charity's done, the legacy of Mr. Mandela is incredible, and what you continue to do. You know, you're speaking about things a lot of people don't realise, that a lot of the children in South Africa, that they are so unprotected, you know, they're so vulnerable, and they need people like ourselves to look out for them, to protect them, to shelter them, you know. So they're saying you're an inspirational woman, Kathi, and you are.
Oh, Sinead, hi Sinead. And yeah, you know, it's also, you know, one of the major things that we have to think about as well, it's the mental health of everybody, not just in South Africa, but here and everywhere. And that is a major problem at the moment, you know, huge problem that we're going to have to address and really be forward thinking in terms of what we do in South Africa and here in terms of children, but not in isolation from their families as well, because, you know, the increase of mental health issues, domestic violence, isolation, you know, it's tough for people at the moment everywhere. And you know, I think there's so much work that we have to do, and we have to, you know, we just got a massive burden. And I think those who work in those caring communities or professions carry a great burden of care on their shoulders. You know, you'd have many sleepless nights. And I think I really wish that there were, you know, I really wish that more people could understand that as well, that it's not easy working in the charity industry. There's a lot of stuff going on in the back room that people are just not aware of, and it's
they don't know. They don't realise that you're fighting this fight, but you've got a lot of politics, bureaucracy, and all the things. And meanwhile, you're trying to protect. Meanwhile, you're trying to fundraise, trying to get donations out, and things and resources out to impoverished areas to help kids. Basics that we take for granted, you know. But you're doing great. You're doing great, and you know, I have no doubt Mr. Mandela would have been proud. I'm proud of you and what the charity's doing. My question is, how can people connect with you? Where do they need to go to donate, to be a part, to get newsletters, they can get involved in the charity?
Well, it's really easy. So they can either contact us directly through Instagram, and it's at We Are NMCF UK. They can contact me on Kathi.Scott, and we'll, you know, if you inbox us, then we'll find you pretty easy. Again, we're obviously, like most people, having to work from home, and we're having to limit what we can do. So post isn't a good idea at the moment. And
yeah, won't get it.
But I think Instagram is a fantastic model for, you know, for working off. We're using it a lot. Not so much, we haven't been posting a lot lately, but then the UK obviously is predominantly fundraising and events, and we've not been able to do that. But yes, it's at We Are NMCF UK and or Kathi.Scott, and we'll get back
Wonderful.
to you.
No, definitely. Thank you. Thank you, my precious. You're my friend. I love you, as you know, and thank you for coming on this Who Am I talk. We've been speaking about it, and I said my first one, who is it going to be with? It's going to be with Kathi. You know, to start the year off with someone incredible, with what you represent, with Nelson Mandela. So thank you so much for joining me, supporting me.
Yeah,
always supported me, and I love you for that.
Obviously, I've just had braces fitted in my mouth, and I'm talking like I'm eating lemons at the minute, but I'll hopefully get around that. But no, Renee, thank you to you, because you've been a fantastic ambassador for the Children's Fund for many years now. And
thank you, babe.
You know, the one thing that we know is that, you know, not just because you're a friend, but also if we pick the phone up and we say, we're doing this, we need help with that, can you support this? You're always one of the top ones to do it. And you know, I'm so grateful to you, to have you in my life, not just as my friend, but also just the incredible work that you do to help us. You've been there every step of the way, and you know, we really appreciate that. So you're part of our team.
Thank you, Kathi, always. Yeah, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. It's an honor to be a friend of yours, honor to be a part of such an incredible charity. You know, as a child watching him, and then to be a part of his legacy has been phenomenal. And you know, many more years. You know, let's keep him alive. That's what I say. Let's look after the children. And thank you so much, guys, for joining. We've had loads of. They said, well done, girls. You're both awesome. My head's all big. My heads are big. No, but thank you. And I can't wait to see you, my darling. I think it's overdue. So hopefully when they open this up, we can meet. We can't even cuddle. We can't do anything like that, but we can social distance or whatever they're talking about.
I know it's a very tough time. You know, I mean, I haven't seen my mum for a year, and I'm getting to the end of my tether now. It's also not nice that you just can't go anywhere. It's also not nice living in London, because you know, especially at night, I look out over London and I, you know, can see a lot of the big sights from my apartment, and I say to myself, you know, there's a city out there, but there's nobody in it. It's just like a ghost town. And I've just seen Taff has joined, and we're just about to leave. Taff, sorry.
Taff, you have to watch it back, sweetie. Everyone's coming now. It's typical, isn't it? But it's after time they finish eating and settle down, you know. But thank you so much. Who has joined? You can watch it back. It'll be on the IG. And love you lots, Kathi. Keep up the great work.
And I really hope to see everybody soon, and we can all be together in one room having a party. And
definitely
doing really good work for charity. I'm really can't wait for that day.
Definitely. And you take care. God bless you. Okay.
You too.
You soon, sweetie pie.
Lots of love.
Love you lots.
Okay. You too.
Bye, sweetie. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, sweetie.
Bye.
Bye, darling.